On April 3rd, 1973, on a New York City street corner, in front of a group of reporters, Motorola engineer Martin Cooper picked up a device larger than a brick and made the first cell phone call in history. Hey, it's Marco Pelosi III, and this is the Top Cosmetic Gynecologists Podcast. Weighing in at 2 pounds and retailing for $10,000 of today's dollars, the first cellular phones became commercially available in 1984. A decade later, they added rudimentary computers with the amazing ability to display a calendar. A decade after that, they added cameras and the ability to browse that new thing called the Internet. And then came Facebook, 2004, YouTube, 2005, Twitter, 2006, and the iPhone in 2007. And the world changed. And the ways that people connect changed. And those who understand how things changed have found unexpected success. And today we're going to speak with someone who understands these things perfectly and tap into some of the elements of this success. This is Dr. Pelosi III. We're here today on the Top Cosmetic Gynecologists Podcast with a special guest who is known to very many people, especially my staff and a lot of very young people. We have the one and only Dr. Michael Salzhauer, who you know as Dr. Miami. Michael,
thank you for having me on. Thank you for that introduction. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So what are you up to these days? What's your current practice? Any new projects, or are you pretty much doing what you've been doing all year long? Is there anything on the horizon that we should know about?
Yeah, the new thing that's coming, I'm very excited about it, actually. I'm glad you asked me that question. This month, in October, I'm going to be starting to do the new penis implant, the Penuma. That was invented by Dr. Ellis in Los Angeles and has just gotten FDA clearance. So everything goes well. In October, I'll be the first plastic surgeon putting in this new penis augmentation implant. So that's pretty exciting. I feel like there's a very, very big market for that operation and a high demand and not a lot of people, not a lot of options for people. And after watching him do it five or six times, I feel like there's a very potentially big and bright future for that operation. So that's the newest thing, the operation field, as far as surgery goes. But otherwise, like as far as social media and stuff, I've been into TikTok lately, which I think is exploding, not just among young people, but even among the older demographic, people getting into it. Just doing my thing, operating, doing a lot of mommy makeovers and that kind of stuff, which is about this.
Well, that's great. I mean, that's a fresh bit of news because I actually am also involved with this Penuma procedure, and I just wanted you to explain the procedure, exactly what it is, what it does, and how it's different from other previous attempts to enhance the penis.
Right. Okay. So, all right. So let's start with the history of penis augmentation. So, until this point, the two big things you can do, big operations or procedures you can do, one is you can go in and release the ligament that kind of holds the penis in place on the pubic bone. That adds about an inch or an inch and a half of length. But the drawback is that when you get erect, the penis no longer faces up, like it kind of goes straight or down. So that's a fairly big drawback to that. That's as far as increasing the length. As far as increasing the girth, people have been injecting fat, or they've been injecting fillers like hyaluronic acid, the kind of stuff that you put in your lips to make them bigger. The problem with those is that it tends to, on the one hand, the fillers tend to dissipate after 6 months to a year, and the more permanent fillers tend to leave bumps or lumps and not be smooth or even. Same thing with the fat. The fat is very unpredictable. Although it does add girth right away, sometimes it adds too much girth. If you gain weight, it gets real fat. And then also, in some places, the fat can die, and in other places, the fat lives, so it ends up being not perfectly even. So aesthetically, the look of the penis can be quite strange if you inject fat or fillers and it doesn't take evenly. And neither of those two operations really do much for increasing your flaccid length or how you look in a locker room and that kind of thing. In general. So that's where we were with this penis augmentation technology. Now, of course, there's there's non-surgical methods where you can like put a contraption on that kind of stretches your penis. You have to wear it like 12 hours a day at night or during the day for 8 to 12 weeks, and you get maybe half an inch of increase in length, but it really doesn't do much for the girth of the penis. So that was the existing technology. So comes along Dr. Ellis, who is a urologist for the last 30 some odd years in LA, and about 10 years ago he patented and started developing this penile implant that essentially goes underneath in a deep plane under the layers of the skin on the top 2/3 of the penis. It's like a canopy basically that it does two things. First of all, it immediately increases the girth of the penis, both erect girth and flaccid girth. It increases the flaccid length of the penis because it's an implant that doesn't contract like most men. When they're scared or cold or whatever, there's what they call shrinkage. Like the penis will contract into the by the pubic bone. It just kind of pulls it in, and having the implant there increases your flaccid length. No matter what, you kind of eliminate the shrinkage effect dramatically. Now, as far as increasing erect length, the weight of the implant itself over time slowly stretches the length of the penis by anywhere from a half an inch to 2 inches, depending on how lucky the recipient is. But and the other thing is the implant itself comes in different sizes, so you can adjust it to the length of the penis that you're working with, and different thicknesses. So in case you don't want the shaft thicker than the head, because then it kind of looks like a penguin and not kind of a little strange. So there's different sizes. You can also take it out if you don't like it. You just go in and take out the implant. So it's reversible. Unlike some of the other stuff that people have tried to do over the years, the penis is people try to put in skin dermis and allograft and that kind of stuff is pretty much irreversible. Once it's in there, it just kind of scars in. So I think it's a pretty interesting breakthrough. The operation itself takes about an hour. It costs about $16,000, so it's fairly pricey. But remember, it's a new operation with not a lot of people doing it.
Right.
And the recovery time is you go back to work, within a week, but you can't have sex for 6 to 8 weeks. So no sex, no masturbation for 6 to 8 weeks. That's kind of a downer for a lot of guys. But then it's either that or just live with your penis the way it is. So.
Right. Are there any contraindications to the procedure, or is it something for everybody?
You have to be circumcised. So if you're not circumcised, you have to have a circumcision first, let that heal for 2 or 3 months, and then go ahead and do it. The incision to put the implant in is actually in the suprapubic area, so there's no actual incisions on the penis itself or on the shaft, and that incision hides in the hair-bearing skin of the pubic area, so your partner can't really tell. From the hundreds of patients, maybe even thousands of patients that have been done over the last 10 years, there's a very, very high satisfaction rate, both for the patient and for the partners of the patient, which is really, I guess, the ultimate beneficiary.
That's fantastic. So how soon are you going to be offering this procedure to your patients down in Miami?
Well, we're going to do our first cases October 24th, and then we'll watch the follow-up a little bit, and then after that, we'll see, right from that point on.
That's fantastic.
Starting in November, yeah.
That's fantastic. Now, is this something that can be combined with other procedures like liposuction, or right now do they want to keep it as its own?
Okay, so I think in the future it will be able to be combined with other procedures. Right now we're going to keep it by itself because I just want to control all the factors that we can and make sure that we can technically get good at it and see the normal course of follow-up before we add other things on.
Fantastic. Yeah. Now let's get into the social media a little bit, but before we do that, I mean, it's so irresistible to just go over your story with social media because it's something that, it hit everybody like a punch in the face. It came out of a fairly conservative industry, which doesn't do much. And, they've always been worried about showing too much and revealing, it's the one some would say is just the patient's confidentiality. It just brings into play all of these conversations. So let's go back to when you started. How did you get started in social media at all?
Well, first of all, plastic surgery it's a sexy topic. I mean, people love to talk about it. 20 years ago, 25 years ago, even if you picked up any gossip magazine, any tabloid, there were always stories about plastic surgery. Speculating on which stars have plastic surgery, who didn't, what procedures are available. So people like to talk about it. The part that was missing, though, was being able to show what plastic surgery actually entails. So it was kind of like this big black box in the public's, in the average person's mind. Plastic surgery was just this thing. How it actually happened or what it was able to do was sort of a mystery. Now, social media came along, and it's the perfect medium for showing what we do because it's so visual, it's so graphic. Now, I can't take credit for coming up with the idea of putting before and after pictures on Instagram or showing procedures on Snapchat, because the actual credit belongs to a patient that came in for a consultation, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, and or maybe longer, and she said, she said your social media is really stupid, and I was kind of taken aback. What do you mean? She says, I don't care about your vacations or your food or even the pictures of the pretty girls that work here. All I want to see is your before and after pictures and how your surgery's done. And I was like, well, but I have a website. Why don't you just go onto my website? She's like, oh, everybody has a website. But on social media, I can't be bothered with that. I want to see it on your social media. So anyway, that actual patient never booked surgery with me. She left the office, but after insulting my social media, and then I went home that weekend. I thought about it, and I'm like, you know what? I think she's right. And I just took all the pictures from my website, the before and after, and I just started putting them, one a day on social media. And lo and behold, I went from having like 150 followers to maybe 10,000 followers within a couple of weeks. It was, which is, pretty good for, a middle-aged doctor in a conservative, field, a conservative like surgery, right? But, and then we started getting phone calls from social media. So I immediately shifted my attention from whatever other kinds of marketing I was doing at the time, just to the Instagram. And within, I would say, from maybe October until December, we grew to 80 or 90,000 followers. And then one day I woke up and my Instagram was deleted. And the reason it was deleted is because we were showing, and now we tried to cover up the nipples and the butt cracks and things like that, but we were showing fairly graphic pictures.
Sure.
People were reporting them, and we got reported one too many times, and the account was deleted. And after calling lawyers and calling Instagram, trying to figure out how to get it back, they said there was nothing we could do. So I was moping around the house, and my daughter, who was about 15 at the time, she said, Dad, why don't you try Snapchat? And the only thing I knew about Snapchat at that time was that it was for sexting. And I said, what do you know about Snapchat? And she said, no, Dad, no. They have a new feature called Stories where you can put what's going on in your day. And it literally, the Stories feature had just come out, that maybe a week before. So I went to the office and I spoke with some of the younger staff members who actually knew how to use Snapchat. We downloaded it to our phone. The first patient of that day happened to be a 19-year-old girl who was on Snapchat and knew what it was. I said, would you mind if we Snapchat your surgery? She said, I don't mind at all. She signed the consent form, and we Snapchatted it. The next day I came home. I showed my daughter that we had 1,500 people watching, and I was actually disappointed. I was like, only 1,500 people, because I'm thinking my Instagram had 9,000 people. What's 1,500? It's really not that much.
Right.
She said, Dad, that's a lot for Snapchat, because you understand there's no way to search on Snapchat. The only way 1,500 people saw your Snapchat is if one person told their friend and forwarded it. She said, okay, fine, I'll try it again the next day. The next day we had 3,000 and then 6,000, and it doubled every day for that whole week until we had like 100,000 people watching.
That's crazy.
And then within 6 months, 1 million, 1.5 million. It was like a phenomenon. And then as soon as 1 million people were watching, TV stations started calling, TV production companies wanted to do a reality show, newspapers, Nightline. It really was quite, a media storm, which was, just a pleasant surprise. It wasn't like we planned it, but we were lucky enough. So, and then of course I had, besides just being a window into the operating room, like I said before, plastic surgery was kind of like this black box that people didn't know what happened. Even if you watch Grey's Anatomy, you went into the operating room scenes. You just see the people talking and you kind of see the machines beeping, but you don't see the actual sausage being made, so to speak. With the Snapchat, you actually get to see it. And for the first couple of weeks, I got a lot of messages on my story that were like questions like, "Is this real? Is this not real, right? It's a movie. This is like a set or something. Is she dead? What's happening there?" So people were really quite, they'd never seen surgery before. And so we started explaining it step by step. And of course, I got, bubbly young people in my office that work with me, and they're just funny, and they just kind of put their personalities and their love into the Snapchat. It was like having your own little reality show in your pocket. So the reactions were at first quite enthusiastic, and then a mix of enthusiasm and disgust. So some people would watch a tummy tuck for the first time and say, I am never, ever having a tummy tuck. Right? If that's what they do when they do a nose job, I'm not having that done to me. But then a lot of people are like, that's not so bad. And you know what? The before and after picture makes it look worth it. And especially when you show the patient beforehand and afterhand, they're talking on the Snapchat or on the social media, people get to know the patients and know the process. And so it's an amazingly powerful educational tool in that respect. Patients, after a few months of watching the Snapchat, would come into the office, and the consultations, instead of taking an hour and a half, they would take 15 minutes because the patients had seen the actual surgery. It was almost, the informed consent was almost redundant because some patients would come in and say, oh yeah, you're going to take the 38 millimeter cookie cutter, then a number 15 blade, you're going to make an incision around the areola, you're going to,
right.
You can describe the operation, better than most third-year medical students. So in that respect, it also made the surgical process and education process easier for me and for the patient. And like I said, it's the ultimate informed consent because they know exactly what's going to be happening to them. And if we Snapchat the surgery, they have the ultimate medical record because they have the actual surgery in video form for them. And I think that was the biggest hurdle for some of the staff and for some of my colleagues to get over. The idea that having a camera in the operating room would somehow put them at increased liability. And to me, I think that was although it was a little counterintuitive, I think it was the opposite. I feel like having a record of the surgery can only help you, if you're a good surgeon and you have patient safety in mind and all that stuff. And if something goes wrong, it's not like you're suddenly going to be free from a lawsuit or free from blame if something goes catastrophic. If anything, having a record might serve to defend you, that you tried to do everything you could, and yet this thing happened. There's less room for an aggressive attorney to paint you in whatever kind of sinister light they want to if there's a video of what's actually happening. It's kind of like police wearing body cameras,
Right.
In the end of the day, it helps the police more than anything else. So that was it. In the beginning, there were a lot of surgeons that were, distancing themselves from me. Like, oh, that's crazy. I would never do that. What's he doing? Now that everybody's going to know we play music in the OR, he's explaining too much or he's explaining too little. But at the end of the day, the public decided that this was, in balance, a good thing and not a bad thing. I think the rest of the specialty kind of has come along to that conclusion too, I think.
Right. Well, the societies have always been the last ones on board with this kind of activity. Yeah. I remember back in the mid-2000s, they were against the Dr. 90210 and those reality shows. I'm sure that you got blowback because you're the icon. I mean, you're the one that they want to make an example of. So have you had a lot of resistance from the societies?
Yeah, no, you know what? It was more just like talking behind my back and like scuttlebutt because it's hard for them to publicly scold or try to reprimand something that's just so popular. It's like social media is a double-edged sword. Just like Twitter can be an amazing, outlet to get your ideas out, it can also serve to be your downfall if you say the wrong thing. And I think they were a little bit afraid of the power of social media, not knowing how to handle it. If they knew that it's like a very powerful weapon that they'd never wanted pointed at them. So I feel like they kind of pulled their punches,
right? Because
they knew what was possible. On the other hand, I also knew that if I messed up, they would be the first ones to try to, like you said, make an example out of me. But thankfully, really, it's just thank God nothing bad happened, and instead of that window that they might have had to kind of make an example passed, and more plastic surgeons and others got on board. All kind of doctors, not just plastic surgeons. I mean, general surgeons, orthopedic surgeons. I mean, you go online and see almost any kind of surgery you want now on social media.
Right.
And I think imbalance is a really, really good thing for medicine.
I would agree for everything. Now, what is your process like? Let's say that you have a case planned and you plan to broadcast it on social media. Do you have a specific process in place right now that you use?
Well, first of all, the most important thing is to get the patient's permission. And I never pressure any patients at all. Right now, about 50-50. 50% of my patients want to be on Snapchat or social media, 50% don't. And I let the patients make their own decisions. A lot of patients come to me because of the social media, so they know that it's an option that's there for them if they want it. And like I said, about half of them do. They have to sign a fairly rigorous consent form. That also includes the option for them to, like a panic button, to shut it off. If they wake up in the recovery room and they change their mind, I think surgeons should have a mechanism and give the patients an option to delete it immediately. So, or at any point in the future, if they decide, you know what, I don't want this on social media anymore, you should give them the option to delete it. And that's only happened once or twice, but I think, but it is an important aspect, I think, of the consent form.
Right.
And then the other thing is, some patients want to be known on social media, like they want their tattoos shown and they want their name shouted out, they want their family, to be, mentioned or whatever their business is. Almost like performance art. Others want to be completely anonymous, and they want to make sure their tattoos are covered, and any identifying marks are covered and that sort of thing. So that's the first step. And then once we get into the operating room, everything is exactly the same as a regular operation, except for and we generally don't broadcast the entire operation. Mommy makeover, front and back, breast lift, tummy tuck, and BBL can take 5 or 6 hours. Watching 5 or 6 hours of surgery is boring for even the most enthusiastic medical person. But we kind of give the highlights, the important parts, the key things that I think are the most interesting. And with that, we try to make it a little bit educational and a little bit entertaining as well. So we'll have some banter. We'll answer questions that people send in. We'll play the music that we always play in the operating room in the background. People will request songs, that kind of thing. A little bit of an interactive aspect to it. At the same time, patient safety is always front and center. The amount of time we spend, we want to say, let's say, distracted by the Snapchat is no more than 3 or 4 minutes, even in 4 or 5 hours of surgery. And which is no different than, let's say, if there was a medical student or somebody observing that you'd be talking to them, trying to explain what's going on. Instead of explaining to the student, we're explaining to the camera. And of course, the whole time anesthesia is making sure the patient's stable, et cetera, et cetera. Again, that's the only legitimate criticism anyone could have is the amount of time that's spent distracting from the actual operation. But it really turns out to be quite a minimal amount in a typical long operation. And again, it's no different than, let's say, talking to a student that would be in the room.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, along those lines,
as we do, we just explain what we're doing as we're going.
Along those lines, have you changed the way you operate in any way because of how it looks on the video? Not in a bad sense, but just in a sense that if I stand to the left or if I stand to the right, it looks better.
No. We don't change. We never changed the operative technique in any way for the camera, but we do now know the better places for the camera, like the better angles. Where you can get better views, where they're not seeing my back blocking the camera. So those we have learned how to broadcast it so people can see what they really want to see.
Right.
And then we always show a before and after picture, and then we try to show follow-ups in the exam rooms afterwards, weeks and months later. My best patients, the ones that I think are the best for social media, are the ones that want to talk, want to tell their story, because that is the most relatable to the audience, to people that are watching. So I think that's one tip I would give if you're starting in social media and you're a doctor or surgeon. Try to find patients that you like you, who are willing to share their story with the world, because that will really draw people in. Right.
Now, as far as video equipment, are you using phones or are you using something a little more advanced?
Just the iPhone. That's it. The iPhone cameras are fantastic. The only thing I regret is that because the Snapchat and a lot of the social media platforms are in like a vertical format.
Right.
If you try to bring it over to YouTube, you lose the side. It's a different format, so you just kind of get like a strip of the screen. But yeah, that's the only downside of using the phones is it's a vertical medium.
Right. Now, previously, I have heard, this was back in like 2010, or previous to that even, from marketing experts, quote unquote, that say patients don't like to see blood. Now, this seems counterintuitive to what you're saying, is that patients are very interested in seeing the surgery.
They are interested. People were, everybody's an expert until until the received wisdom is overthrown. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
How do they know that patients don't want to see blood? From what studies, from what experiments that they ran, would they know that? It was just an assumption. It's true, some patients don't want to see blood, but those patients will skip through the parts that they don't want to see, or some patients will see the actual operation now it's done, and it will turn them off. And that's fine, because you want patients that are enthusiastic, educated in terms of what they're about to do to their bodies, and informed. And the best way to do that is to actually show them how it's done.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, how many of your staff are involved in the social media production for your company?
So in the beginning, it was just me. Then we had 2 full-time Snapchatters. Now we're back to 1 full-time, and then some of the other girls in the office will pitch in to pick up the slack. So I would say it's a at least 1.5 person full-time job.
And are they on site, or is this off-site just on the internet?
They're all on site. It's hard to do it off-site. The off-site stuff that we outsource is like if we're going to put a video compilation together or an especially detailed graphic, we'll outsource that. But all the live stuff, whether it's Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook, if we're going to do a live video or delayed live video, the person has to be in the office. That's where the rubber meets the road. It's very hard to outsource this stuff and be effective.
Right. So now, are you exclusively? You mentioned that you're thinking about TikTok or moving into TikTok.
Oh yeah, I've been moving in. I moved in about maybe a month ago, 6 weeks ago. We've got almost 100,000 followers on TikTok. TikTok is extremely addicting. It's very, very entertaining. It started with real young kids as an app called Musical.ly. 5-6 years ago. It was bought out by a company called TikTok, and then they changed their name. And then the last 2 years, it is like by far the fastest growing social media, and it has increasingly been morphing over to an older audience. So it started out as like a fun little thing for kids, age 10 to 14. Now all the college kids are into it. The young early 20s are into it, and even some old middle-aged doctors like me.
Right.
I think that's the future that's the next big social media. And the sooner you get into it, the better. There's a dentist on there called The Bentist that has 1.2 million followers, doing fantastic. There's a guy called The Braces Guy, who's an orthodontist, who's got, 500,000 followers or something. And it shows their creative side. It gets to show. Now you can't show blood and guts on TikTok. It's the nudity parameters, and even in general, anything that even remotely comes close to violating their policies, their algorithm won't even let you post it. It won't even go up. It will detect nudity, detect anything off, and it won't even let it upload. So forget about that. But as far as interacting with your audience and showing and educating and being like unique and clever, it's really, really special. So get into it if you can.
How does the TikTok look? What does the posting look like?
So TikTok is kind of like Vine, but longer. So Vine was very, very popular before it went out of business. And Vine had these 6-second videos you can make. It has a very cute camera editor with filters and things like that. TikTok allows you to make 15-second, I think 30-second, 60-second, and beyond videos, just like the way you make Vines. So a lot of memes that you will see on Instagram or Facebook, they start off on TikTok, Twitter, or Reddit. That's where those are the incubators for like the trends. So something, even songs. For example, that song, what's that song that was number 1 for like 18 weeks in a row this year? It's like a mix. I can't remember. Old Town Road.
Okay.
Anyway, it's that song spent more weeks at number 1 on the Billboard chart than any other song in the history of Billboard. And that song went viral and was discovered on TikTok. So think about that. Think about all the songs that have ever been recorded in the history of Billboard music recording charts. The Beatles, Elvis, okay? A song that was put on TikTok by a 17, 18-year-old kid and went viral on TikTok has spent more time at number one than any other song in history. So if that doesn't send you a message as to how powerful that medium is, I don't know what else will, right?
Yeah. So how do you become aware of the trends in the social media? Are you following any of the big influencers? Anybody that really stands out in your mind?
Yeah, so I follow I follow everybody. I follow as many influencers as I can, mainly just to keep my pulse on what's trending.
Right. Let's say you could only follow 3 for whatever you were limited to 3. Who would you recommend to people who would give the most learning potential?
The most bang for your buck. I mean, I like watching Supreme Patty because he's just silly and he actually hangs out. And there's a whole bunch of influencers that kind of hang out with him.
Right.
If you had to follow one person, you should definitely be following John Legend and Chrissy Teigen. Like they're always they always have something interesting to say. And then the Kardashians. I mean, and Kanye West. You need to follow the biggest people because they are they're anything that they do immediately ripples out through the social media stratosphere. But those, I mean, because you made me name 3, so those would be the 3 that you could learn the most from or for.
Right.
But in general, you want to be on Twitter. You want to be, if you know how to use Reddit and you're into Reddit, you want to be on Reddit. You want to be on TikTok. Those are the places that is where the pulse of the culture begins. That's the SA node of the heart. Like that's the place. And then it spreads from those to Instagram and to Facebook. So it's like that. That's the thing.
Now, what happened to your website? Your website is basically just an informational document?
I don't think I've looked at my website 3 or 4 years, like as far as stylistically or content-wise, really, or anything. What I use the web for is just for contact forms. So like a landing page. Your social media should be your primary method of attraction for patients, and that should send them to a landing page where you can get their information. Have them fill out like maybe a brief medical form about who they are and what they're interested in. They should be able to upload their pictures so you can look at them right away, and that will greatly streamline your marketing. A website is, patients can get lost on a website. They really can. Right. And then you're comparing website to website, and they'll just jump around, and it's not great. And then plus, a website itself, you need to drive traffic to it. So how are you going to drive traffic to it if not through social media or paying a fortune to Google?
Right. What I'm asking about would be the doctor. Let's say we have a doctor that's just getting into social media because he or she heard, I need to get into social media. And they're scratching their head, staring at their phone and computer screen and saying, where do I go?
Here's what I would do. I would imagine your ideal patient and your ideal procedure. Okay, so let's say you've been practicing for a while and you love doing breast implants. Okay, that's your operation. You want your practice. If you could wave a magic wand and only do breast implants for the rest of your life, fine. What kind of patient would you prefer to operate on? Or how old are they? What do they look like? What demographic are they? Is it a 35-year-old mother of 3? Is it a 25-year-old college student? Who is this ideal patient of yours? And then when you go into social media, you imagine that you are just speaking to that demographic about that procedure. Now, it could be 3 procedures, but it should not be the word. You can't be talking to the whole world. And you can't be talking about every possible procedure because the message will get garbled and you will attract nobody. You need to pick your specific thing that you want and imagine the person you're talking to. And then think about what they would be attracted to. What kind of music they listen to, where they live, what did they like? And the beauty of social media is you know what those people like because there's literally a like button. At every post, you can see what people hit the like button for. So if you start following people in their demographic you're trying to attract, you can see what they literally like. And then you start posting things in that theme, in that vein, and you will see like magic. You'll have if you like the things they like, they will like you.
Right. Now, when you started, though, you were just posting what you liked to post, which was basically just a slice of a day in your practice, and people just gravitated to it. So I'm sure the way that it developed for you was just slightly different because it was.
But not really because I had always, even on the Instagram, before the Snapchat, before the video part, I had that philosophy in mind. In other words, and I knew, for example, if you post pictures of the Kardashians, or you say you like Kanye West music, or you like rap music, or you like this, it's going to attract a whole bunch of people, but it's going to turn off a whole bunch of people too. So you have to be ready to like put yourself out there and say, okay, I'm willing to identify and attract and say, this is what I like and this is what I don't like. Or maybe, or even not, but this is what I like, and if you don't like it, that's fine too, but I understand I'm going to be losing. So you can't put a general message out for everybody because you'll attract nobody. So even my Instagram was themed towards women. It was themed towards a young demographic, and again, an urban demographic, a demographic that I love to work with, that I enjoy in my practice, that are similar to the girls that work in my office. And that was a conscious thing. If I had gone out on my Instagram and started posting facelift pictures, and at the same time posted something about Kanye West or Kim Kardashian, well, the people who get facelifts are not into Kanye West. They're not into hip hop music. They're not into any of the stuff. They don't have their finger on the pulse of popular culture. It's the exact opposite. The message would have been garbled. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, but if you want to do only facelifts, then you think about what the demographic looks like, what they like, what they're into. Maybe they're into Real Time with Bill Maher, or they're into watching certain shows on Netflix, or they're into Downton Abbey, whatever it is, and then you focus on a message that's in line with that.
That makes a lot of sense for these people. It's like baiting a hook for the right fish. You got to.
Yes, exactly. You got to bait the hook for the right fish, but first you got to think about the fish you want.
Right.
And that way you'll be happier in the end, because your practice suddenly it won't be like going to work as much, because we for whatever, you can't like to do every operation on every kind of person. We're just not possible, right?
Right.
Very few people can say that. So you know your sweet spot, find your sweet spot, talk to your sweet spot, play to your audience that you like, and you'll attract them.
Right. I'm on your Wikipedia page right now because I Googled you yesterday and I said I got to leave this up. There's some good stuff here.
Don't believe everything on Wikipedia.
Well, it says you authored it. Anyhow,
believe me, I'd be on there all day.
I'm not going to bust your chops about it. Anyhow, it looks as if you already knew a little bit about media before you even started Snapchatting. It says that you wrote a book one time.
Yes.
Tell me about the book.
So the children's book I did in 2008. It was really just a pamphlet that I was giving out to my own patients in the beginning, because I was doing a lot of mommy makeovers. A lot of kids were coming in, and the parents were this is back in the early 2000s. The parents were just ignoring the kids, not answering their questions about what was going on. And I could see this almost look of panic on the kids' faces when mommy was at the doctor's office in a gown with tubes coming out of them, blood, their face covered. And, the kids were, in my opinion, they were kind of traumatized by the lack of information. So, and then imagine you're a 6-year-old kid and mommy comes home and she looks completely different, after having bandages on her face. It's a puzzle, and the kids will use their imagination and fill in the blanks the way they want to, and imagine all kinds of crazy things. So this children's book just goes through it's called My Beautiful Mommy. It's about a woman who's getting a tummy tuck and a nose job, and she sits down and she explains to her kids what's going to happen. Your mommy's going to be in bed for a few days, and daddy's going to take you to school, and grandma's going to buy you ice cream, and then mommy's going to have bandages, and goes through the process so that they're not scared. And patients were bringing it to were taking it from the office and reading it to their kids before they had their surgery, so it wouldn't be as traumatic. anyway, so we had a children's book publishing company publish it for us, just so it was a little bit nicer than just a pamphlet. And one of these copies of this book got out to the media, and it was like a media frenzy because in their minds it was, this is a children's book about plastic surgery, like people are just going to grab it off the shelf at Barnes & Noble and start reading it to their kids instead of Goodnight Moon, which is not the intention of the book at all. So I had to go on the Today Show and the Early Show and all that stuff and explain what it was. So it was controversial, but not really. But it did teach me a lot about how the media operates, and that was very helpful down the road with the other stuff. We did, when YouTube came out, we started doing YouTube videos to try to mainly have fun in the office. And then we did there was a rock band that I like to listen to, and the guys in the band had big noses, and they said, we have big noses. I said, well, if you write me a song, I'll trade you a nose job for it. So the lead singer took me up on it, and we made a video. It is a very funny song, and that was a little controversial too. And we go from shtick to shtick in the late 2000s, just having fun and also trying to educate people about plastic surgery. But the theme is that I've never really strayed off of that tactic or that idea that I'm trying to speak with a young audience, the kind of patients that I'd like to operate on, and they're almost all under 35. Although I operate up to the age of 50, but they're mainly in the younger, 20s, 30, early 30s demographic.
Right.
Yeah.
Do you have kids?
If they're into YouTube, I'm into YouTube. If they're into Instagram, I'm into Instagram.
Now you have a daughter. How many children do you have?
I have 5 kids. Yeah, that's why I got out of the children's book. At that time, I only had 4 kids, and I think they were all under the age of 10. So all I did was read children's books. That was basically the only reading I could do at home, which is children's books. So that's what prompted me to try my hand at that.
And who came up with the term Dr. Miami?
So that, my name is just too hard to say and pronounce, and some people started calling me Dr. Miami, and then and then it stuck with social media. First, it started on YouTube. It started on we had an app called iSurgeon, and they wanted to put it on a CD back when people actually had CDs for software, and they called it Dr. Miami Surgeon in a Box. And that was the first commercial use of that name. Was 2009 or 10 or so, and then it just kind of stuck. Yeah.
Now, would you?
And you know what? It's a good thing too, because let's say my name was Dr. Smith, and it was something easy to say and pronounce and whatever. I would have never thought, or no one would have ever thought to shorten it or make it into anything but what it is. But in hindsight now, it's one of the reasons why the social media was so successful, because it's not unlike rappers. Like, you don't know who 50 Cent's real name is, right?
Right.
Or Snoop Dogg or Fetty Wap. You don't know their real names because you don't need to. They've replaced their real name with a persona and an easier to remember defining nickname. And that works way better. And plastic surgeons are rock stars, right?
Sure.
So why not? Why reinvent the wheel? And there's a lot of surgeons out there now that have nicknames. Dr. Six, Dr. Feelgood,
now,
Dr. BBL.
Do you
Dr. B Fixin? I mean, there's all these great, like rapper equivalent names for doctors.
Now being Dr. Miami, do you think you've lost your privacy, your ability to just go to the supermarket and walk around?
I mean, a little bit, but you know what? I the answer is yes and no. I mean, I realized that what the intrusion was the first time I stopped at a traffic light and was picking my nose, and then a lady in the car next to me was smiling and laughing and pointing, Dr. Miami, Dr. Miami. And he's rolling down her window to try to take a picture. And then I realized that I just picking my nose. And I'm like, okay, this is gonna change my life in subtle ways like that. But look, I'm not like Lady Gaga or Michael Jackson. I mean, it's not like I go to a mall and it shuts down. But when I'm out with my family and stuff, people recognizing them, take pictures and stuff, and it's fun and it's cool, especially since I'm a middle-aged dad, so it's not like it goes to my head or anything.
Right.
It's just another little thing.
Right.
But yeah, you give up a little bit of your privacy. You do.
Yeah. Hey, you grew up in New York, right? You're not from Miami.
I did. I grew up in Rockland County, New York. I went to Brooklyn College for undergrad, and then I went to med school in St. Louis at WashU. And I've been in Miami since '96.
You come from a family of doctors?
Nope, I'm the first doctor. My dad had a high school education, and my mom graduated from college when I was out of the house already in med school.
Are either your parents still alive?
No, my mom is.
Is she in Miami, or is she up?
My dad always wanted me to be a doctor. Ever since I was like 3 years old, he bought me a little stethoscope, and I would listen to his heart before I went to sleep at night. So that I basically had I could be any kind of doctor I wanted. That was my career options. That was it.
All right.
Either doctor or nothing. Yeah.
So then it says you did your residency at Mount Sinai in Miami?
Correct. Mount Sinai, University of Miami, and then the Cleveland Clinic in Weston for aesthetic fellowship, and then opened my private practice.
So you just came down here and you stayed down here.
I stayed. Yep. I figured Miami needs one more plastic surgeon. Actually, my wife made me stay here. I had an opportunity to go to Long Island in the late '90s. That looked really good to me, and she's like, "We're not leaving Miami. You can go by yourself." I'm like, "Okay, fine. I'll stay."
That's great. Yesterday I was in the operating room and I was telling my staff that you were going to be on the podcast, and of course they got all excited, and I wanted to bring them in on the action. So I asked them to compile a list of questions.
Sure.
To ask. So let me go through a couple of these if we didn't hit them already. What's your favorite procedure to do?
Favorite procedure right now is the BBL.
What?
Yeah, it's just the most dramatic. Although, I like doing rhinoplasty because it's more challenging, and it's more variation on themes. But BBL is my favorite.
They wanted to know the patient's favorite procedures. What's the number one procedure that walks in?
The BBL. There's nothing like it. When you can dramatically change a woman's shape, something that has been bothering them forever, and they can go from being square to being curvy. It's like they just blossom, and they're so grateful.
Right.
And you feed off that energy of the gratitude.
Let's take a little tangent into the BBL because in a couple of years ago there was a big scare that some of the techniques were causing emboli. Fat was getting into the bloodstream. What are you doing to keep it safe?
So I just for whatever reason I was lucky that I was never trained to inject fat into the muscle, but for a lot of people they were trained to inject fat into the muscle. Turns out that that's a fairly dangerous thing. So I try to educate other surgeons and educate viewers to let them know that fat should not be injected into the muscle, should be only on top of the muscle and under the skin. Again, I learned how to do it without using sharp cannulas, just blunt tip, large cannulas. Turns out that's safer also. But I'm just really, really cautious and really, really paranoid and just aware of where the cannula tip is. And of course, patient selection is a big thing. We try to make sure that our patients are perfectly healthy, no medical problems whatsoever, BMIs 30 or below, no diabetes, no smokers. We do ultrasounds now for blood clots before the surgery, after the surgery, day 1 and day 7. So that's the latest thing that we've added in the last year.
Oh, that's cutting edge. Do you do it in the office? Do you have a technologist there?
We do. We do have an ultrasound tech that happens to live down the block from the office and happens to need a job. And we're like, you know what? Let's do this.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right. Next.
So we do that. Yeah, we do that. We do that pre-op, day post-op 1, and 7 days post-op.
Is that exclusively for that procedure, or tummy tucks and other procedures as well?
Yeah, tummy tucks too. So any operation that's going to be more than 3 hours, it's a big operation.
That's good to know. That's good to know. The next question they had is: do you work with your wife, or have you ever worked with your wife?
Yeah, my wife worked with me in the beginning when we opened the practice, and then I think by the time kid number 3 or 4 came along, she had enough, and like we got 5 kids, and that's a full-time job, so she's home.
Yeah. Have you ever wished to follow a different career path?
Not really. I can't imagine. I really can't imagine doing anything else well.
All right. Do you have any entertainers in your family?
Entertainers in my family? Nope.
All right.
Nope. Let me think. Nope.
They want to know
I'm the only goofball
They want to know what your favorite movie is.
Okay. Serious movie would be Cinema Paradiso. That's my favorite. And then as far as like silly movies, I'm a big fan of Monty Python and like the Naked Gun airplane type slapstick.
All right. Your favorite vacation spot?
Turks and Caicos.
Okay. Do you have a favorite book?
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
That's an oldie but goodie. A favorite sport?
A favorite what?
A favorite sport.
Favorite sport? Yeah, basketball currently.
And
watch, although I'm terrible at playing it, so I wouldn't call that like favorite as far as doing. But like favorite sport to do, I like to swim.
All right. They also want to know your favorite sports team.
The Heat.
Okay. And if they wanted to know if you have any pets.
We've got a turtle. He's a Russian turtle named Putin.
They live forever.
It's a tortoise. Yeah, it's actually not a turtle. It's a tortoise. I made that horrible mistake in the pet store. The pet manager almost yelled at me.
They also want to know if you've had any work done.
Yes, I have. I had my nose done, my chin done, a little lipo. I've got veneers on my teeth. I do Botox every 3 months. I'm an extremely vain person, full of hubris and all kinds of other bad things.
All right,
yeah. But you know what? I'm not only the hair club president, I'm also a member. You know what I mean? Like, I really believe, I've drunk the Kool-Aid. I really like plastic surgery. It was great.
Well, what does it feel like being on the patient side of things, going from the doctor?
You know what? I had the surgery before I became a doctor, so I think it made me a better doctor. Like, I feel like all plastic surgeons should be a patient at least once, because going through that process really allows you to gain insight and empathy to what your patients are going through.
All right. Well, here's my final question, and I always ask this on the podcast. If Mark Zuckerberg told you tomorrow, Facebook is yours, but you can only post once.
Sorry. Facebook is what?
Facebook is all yours, but you can only post once. Everybody in the world's going to read it, and it can't be taken down, but it's the only thing that's ever going to be on Facebook until the end of time. What would it say? What would that post say?
Well, it would be an infinitely long post. You can tell that as I speak here for hours and hours, just like pontificating. And actually, by the third paragraph, no one would read it. And my wife would just be completely embarrassed and ashamed and say, I don't know why you're wasting your time with that post.
That's great.
But it would be some kind of long manifesto, and the FBI would probably be at my door the next day. So no great words of insight. Everything that's smart has already been said.
Well, that's great. Listen, Michael, I know you're a busy guy. I want to thank you so much for spending the time here on the Top Cosmetic Gynecologists Podcast. And I look forward to meeting you in March down in Miami.
Looking forward to it as well. Thanks for having me on the show, and say hi to your staff for me. All
right. Bye now.
Tell them thank you for watching the Snapchat.
Certainly. Thanks.
Take care.
Bye.
Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Share this podcast and this website and this blog with the people in your life who you feel would benefit from this information.